Hello and welcome to your 2020 Kentucky Derby preview. Now this isn't like most derbies, it's not the first weekend in May, it's the first weekend in September, but there's still a lot of similarities. We've got some of the best 3-year-olds in the world running a mile and a quarter on the Churchill Downs dirt, and it's going to be a fantastic weekend of racing, capped off by the Kentucky Derby. Now this year, with the whole change, has led to one big favorite in the field, and that is your number 17 horse, Tiz the Law, in an 18-horse field. Tiz the Law morning line, 3-5 favorite. We're going to run through each of these horses, talk about where we expect them to be positioned in the race, and if I think they have a good chance of winning or hitting the board, using them in any instance, in either on top in a win bet or underneath, maybe if we're playing a place show, exacta, trifecta, superfecta. Just talk about each horse, and then I'll give you my top 4 horses at the end, the horses that I'm going to use most prominently in my picks. So the number 1 horse is Finnick the Fierce at 50-1. Now this is a horse that ran a pretty strong race earlier this year in the Arkansas Derby, finished 3rd behind Nadal and King Guillermo. Is another horse we're going to touch on. And last year, he's actually the only horse in the field that's ever crossed the wire in front of your favorite Tiz the Law, but that was last year on a sloppy track. He ran 2nd, Tiz the Law ran 3rd, and Tiz the Law's only defeat of his career. Finnick the Fierce notably only has one eye. He's missing his right eye, so he will not be able to see all the other horses lined up outside of him as they go to post. That could be problematic. I don't think I'm going to use Finnick the Fierce, although he is an interesting story and a horse that is very easy to root for. The number 2 horse is Max Player, and Max Player loves coming in 3rd. He's ran 3rd in 2 big races in each of his last 2 races. He's another horse that's going to come off the pace, will be in the back of the pack, make one run at the end. In both the Belmont Stakes and the Travers, he ran 3rd place to Tiz the Law. Now this is a horse that a lot of people, if you like Tiz the Law, you might like Max Player because he's always at least somewhat close to Tiz the Law, has finished in the top 3 in 2 pretty strong races. But for me, I think there's better closers. I probably will not use Max Player. Maybe we'll sprinkle him in the 4th spot in some superfectas. Max Player is on the fence whether I use him. He's 30-1. Probably will be bet down from that because a lot of people do like this horse. The number 3 is Enforceable. And Enforceable is a horse that was really impressive in Louisiana to start the year. He won the Lecomte, ran 2nd in a Risen Star division, and then in the Louisiana Derby, kind of struggled, came back in the Bluegrass, didn't do much better, ran 4th in that race. So Enforceable is a horse that was looking good at one point, but now has been kind of poor recently. But it's been a while since he's run. He hasn't run since July, or even late June actually. So he may have a chance to improve in this race. He's 30-1. He's a horse that I'll probably use just because I think there's a chance that he could have hit the board as a late closer. Each of these first 3 horses don't have much speed. They will be coming from the back of the pack. Now the number 4 is a different story. That's Storm the Court. He was last year's 2-year-old champion, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but has not won a race since then. At 50-1, he is a hard horse to get behind. I just don't really see him being able to get the distance and compete with these top horses. I don't think he's good enough to beat these guys. At 50-1, he will be in the middle of the pack to begin with, but I do not expect him to stay near the top of the pack as they turn for home. Storm the Court, the number 4, I will not be using. The number 5 is Major Fed at 50-1. This is a very interesting horse. We talked about that Louisiana Derby that Enforceable struggled in. Major Fed made up some ground. He only ran 4th in that race, but the race before that in the Risen Star, he ran 2nd place. And this is a horse that's going to come from the back of the pack. He was looking good after those 2, gets the Matt win, and that's where he really struggled. But he was very wide. He had the farthest outside post, and he got spun out way wide on the turn. Really cost him the whole entire race. And he was sitting closer to the pace as well. I think that hurt him because he didn't have that late kick that we're used to seeing. Now he comes back in the Indiana Derby, drops farther back, and is able to make one run. Almost catches Shared Sense for 1st place, but does beat Necker Island, a horse that's in this field. And Major Fed at 50-1 is a horse that I think could make a long run at the end and get into the money. This is a horse that I will be using, the number 5. Now the number 6 horse is King Guillermo, and he had one of the best upsets of any race in the Kentucky Derby Prep Series, and that was in the Tampa Bay Derby, going off at 49-1, and not just winning that race, but absolutely dominating. Beat Sole Volante, who is in this Derby, beat him by a good margin in that race. Comes back in the Arkansas Derby against a loaded field that included Finnick the Fierce and Storm the Court, and a couple horses that were very highly touted at the time but have since been off the Derby trail. Wells Bayou and Nadal. Runs a really solid second place behind Nadal, who would be one of the Derby favorites if he was healthy and geared up for this Derby. King Guillermo has not run since that Derby, the Arkansas Derby, on the first weekend of May, so he's been off for a long time. But if he's up to his full strength, I think he's definitely a win contender in this race. At the very least, he is one of the horses that's going to show early speed from the inside. I think he's going to get great positioning and will have an absolute chance turning for home to either win this race or to finish very strong. King Guillermo, the number 6, is a horse I will be using. The number 7 is Money Moves at 30-1. And this horse is very interesting because he's not run in a stakes race in his career. Only ran 3 races, didn't have any points on the Kentucky Derby Prep, but because there's been some defections and not every horse wanted to run, he's able to get into this field with 0 points towards the Kentucky Derby. Now, he's a big question mark, but only running 3 career races, it's going to be hard for me to trust him, especially when he lost stretching out in his last race. He lost by a little bit, only ran 1 1/8. Now he's going up to 1 1/4. Money Moves is going to be hard for me to use because there's just too many question marks surrounding him. But if you do get a good price, I don't blame you for using him either in an exacta or trifecta, but I don't see him winning this race. The number 8 is South Bend at 50-1. And South Bend was the latest addition to this Derby field. They had pointed him towards a different race, but at the last moment decided to try him in the Derby. He's going to be a very big long shot, but in his last race, he ran 4th in the Travers to, of course, Tis the Law won it, and Max Player, who we talked about earlier, he ran 3rd in that race. South Bend closed for 4th. South Bend has a late closing style as well, just like Major Fed, Enforceable, Max Player, Finnick the Fierce. A lot of these horses on the inside are going to wait and make one run at the end. South Bend is a horse that I will use because I think he's going to be at a big price. I think he's improving on the dirt, and he's already shown that he can run 1 1/4 and finish at a pretty good pace. He was not too far behind Max Player. He's running the same distance, 1 1/4. I think he can improve and beat Max Player this time. Now, it is tough because I probably won't use Max Player and I will use South Bend. The only reason is I think the price, South Bend is going to be at a lot higher odds, and I think he has just as much a chance as Max Player to run in the money. Now the number 9 horse is Mr. Big News. Mr. Big News really shot into the scene with the big upset as well in the Oaklawn Stakes. And that one was crazy because it was on the slop. 1,000 Words was the favorite, the next horse we're going to talk to. But Mr. Big News made a big move at the end, and he shot right up the center of the track, able to win on a sloppy track. Since then, though, not much news at all from Mr. Big News. He struggled in the Bluegrass Stakes, and this is a horse that I just think is a step below the rest of this field. He's not one that I'm be counting on unless it rains. If it does come up muddy and sloppy like it did on that day in Oaklawn, there's a chance for Mr. Big News. Other than that, I'll be tossing him. Now the number 10 horse, 1,000 Words. 1,000 Words, the first of the 2 Bob Baffert trainees in this field. And at 15-1, he's got some of the most question marks in this whole entire field. I think he's one of the toughest horses to handicap because to begin the season, he started off very strong, and then he struggled in that Oaklawn Stakes that Mr. Big News won. He was the favorite and ran the worst race he's run in his career. Came back after a long layoff. It looked like he might not be able to get back in time for the Derby. Comes back at Del Mar, runs 2nd place. Not a great effort, but not terrible enough to give him one more chance to punch his ticket to the Derby. Runs in the Shared Belief Stakes against Honor AP, who is a big horse that we're going to talk about later on. And going off as a long shot, 1,000 Words, is able to take the field coast to coast, and he wins that race If Thousand Words gets back to his previous form, he definitely has a chance in this race. He's one that I will probably have to use. Even though I don't really want to, I don't want to get beat by Thousand Words, so I'll probably use him underneath. The number 11, Necker Island at 50 to 1. And Necker Island is a horse that tries hard, but I just don't think that he can do it. He's going to be running in the middle of the pack. He's not a closer. He's not going to be sitting near the lead. He's going to be in the middle of the pack, but I think he's just going to get lost in the shuffle. At 50 to 1, I think there's a lot better horses, even at those odds in this field. He's going to try hard, but he's never really done much in the stakes races. The best he's finished is in his last couple races. Third in the Indiana Derby, third in the Ellis Park Derby. Neither of those races are that high of quality. Necker Island, sorry buddy, but you will not be on my tickets. The number 12 is Sole Volante, 30 to 1, and he's another deep closer. This horse has been through a lot this year. Right before the Belmont, he was one of the top choices in the Belmont behind Tis the Law, but they decided to run him in an allowance race all the way across the country in Florida just 10 days prior. That's not much time to recover, and he really struggled in the Belmont. He tried to come late with his run, but he was no match for even the other horses that closed late, like Max Player, who closed for third that day at the Belmont. Sole Volante did not hit the board, and since then, he's been training on grass, gearing up for the Derby, because I suspect that they will move him to become a turf horse after this race. So there's just too many question marks there for Sole Volante at 30 to 1. I think there's better closers you can use. I think there's better horses that'll be in that 30 to 1 range to use. Sole Volante will be off my tickets. The number 13 is Attachment Rate, and at 50 to 1, Attachment Rate is one of my favorite long shots in this field. Now, unlike a lot of the 50 to 1 horses, he does have tactical speed. He can sit closer to the pace. He won't be on the lead, but he will probably be right off of it. And this is a horse that is definitely improving. He's done well in each of his last few races, and he's always run into problems. In the Matt win of 3 starts back, he made a decent run at the end, but got beat by New York Traffic and Max Field, who had to miss this race as well as Pneumatic, who's pointed towards the Preakness. So he ran 4th in the Matt win, comes back in the Bluegrass Stakes, and runs a really solid race to get 5th in that race. I thought that he was stuck in traffic a long time. Once he finally was able to make a run, he closed ground on a couple horses, including Fennec the Fierce and Rushy, but gets passed by Enforceable at the wire, comes in 5th place that day. And then in the Ellis Park Derby, running behind Art Collector, who would be one of the big favorites if he was still in this field. Attachment Rate did fine to run 2nd place that day. And I think this is a horse that's improving, and he's had a lot of bad luck in a lot of his races. So if he gets a good trip, this is a horse that could hit the board at a crazy price. I don't think Attachment Rate can win, but I do think he could easily run 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. He will be on all my tickets. The number 14 is Winning Impression, and this is a very stark contrast from another horse that's 50 to 1. Just look at their last race. They were both in the Ellis Park Derby. Attachment Rate ran 2nd place behind a very good horse, Art Collector. Winning Impression ran 7th in that same race. So there were several horses that aren't that great between Attachment Rate and Winning Impression on that day. Winning Impression, the race before that, ran 7th in the Indiana Derby, which was an even weaker field than the Ellis Park Derby. So this is 2 very bad efforts from Winning Impression. The only way that I even think about using him is if it rains. He's another horse that's run his best racing in the mud, in the slop, just like Mr. Big News. The 14 and the number 9, Mr. Big News and Winning Impression, neither one of them will be anywhere near my tickets if it's dry and sunny on Saturday. If it's rainy, then I will contemplate it. Still don't know what I would do, depends on the price. But at this point, Winning Impression, another toss for me. Now we get to the 4 most interesting horses, all at the end, 15 through 18 on the post position. The 15 is New York Traffic at 20 to 1. And this is another horse that I really like and I'm intrigued by. He's always been the runner-up, never the winner in these big stakes races. He's come second place in the Louisiana Derby, but he beat Major Fed and Enforceable in that race. Lost to only one horse, Wells Bayou. Then he comes back into Matt Winn, and he beats Attachment Rate and Major Fed again and Pneumatic, but cannot beat Maxfield. But those are two horses, Wells Bayou and Maxfield, that he will not be facing. Then he comes back in the Haskell against Dr. Post and Authentic. And it looks like Authentic is going to run away with it in the stretch, but New York Traffic fights hard, and he gets up and almost nudges Authentic at the wire. And keep in mind, that's only 1 1/8 miles. Now they're stretching out to 1.25 miles. New York Traffic might want the extra distance. He at least, I think, wants it more than Authentic will. New York Traffic is always right there. He's never won one of these big Kentucky Derby prep races, so I think you're going to get a better price than you really should on him. I don't know if he can win this one, but I think he can definitely finish in the money. New York Traffic is one of my top choices in this race. The number 16 is Honor AP at 5-1. He is your second choice, the second favorite in the Derby. But I guess he deserved to be the second choice. But there's a lot of question marks about this horse, Honor AP. He's only won 2 out of his 5 lifetime starts. So he's lost more than he's won. And he's lost to 2 of the other horses in this field in not too long ago. He lost to Authentic earlier this year. He comes back to beat Authentic in the Santa Anita Derby, but Authentic broke really poorly on that race, broke out wide, and so that's why Honor AP caught him. Then maybe that's not why he caught him, but the only time that Honor AP has won a stakes race, his biggest competition, the favorite Authentic, did not have a good trip at all. Was able to capitalize on that. Now he comes back in the Shared Belief and gets beat by 1,000 Words. And all the Honor AP backers are saying, well, that first race against Authentic, he hadn't run in 4 months. And then the Shared Belief, he was just prepping for this Derby. So, but you're here to tell me that he's only won 1 out of his 3 races this year? That's not that impressive for me. And at a short price, he's going to be hard to back. I don't think Honor AP will win the Derby. I think there's a chance he could run underneath, but I will be leaving him out of a lot of tickets just because of the price. It doesn't help me if Honor AP and Tiz the Law run top 2 or 2 out of the top 3. So I think I'm going to have to try to use some other long shots to beat Honor AP in those secondary and beyond positions. I will use Honor AP, but I won't be happy about it. I will be rooting for other horses, and I think there are other horses at way longer odds that can come in those second and third spots in the Derby. Now we get to the 17 horse, Tiz the Law, and you can't say a bad thing about him. Earlier in the year, he won the Florida Derby, then he comes back and wins the Belmont, but those were both at shorter distances, 1 1/8 miles, and his competition was questionable. I will give you that. So there were definitely question marks going into the Traverse Stakes. Could he get the 1.25 miles? He hasn't really beaten anybody all that great. Who'd he beat in the Florida Derby? His competition was Chivalry, Governor Morris. Then in the Belmont, his competition was Dr. Post, Max Player, Pneumatic. So horses that are good horses, don't get me wrong, but none of the stars, none of the top horses. But then he comes out in the Traverse and runs 1.25 miles in incredible fashion. Didn't even really have to try down the stretch in that race and beat a really good horse in Uncle Chuck, a Bob Baffert horse that was everyone's favorite Baffert horse at the time. Everyone was more hyped on him than 1,000 Words or Authentic, but clearly Uncle Chuck does not want the 1.25 miles distance. And he beat some other good horses. He showed he could beat Max Player again, even by more distance this time. And he beat Caracaro, another horse that would have been a player in this Derby if he was still healthy and training up to it. So Tiz the Law, there's no more question marks for me. If he can run his race, he's going to win this race. If he can get where he wants to be positioned on the outside, he likes to sit right off the leaders or a little bit behind on the outside, wait till that far turn, make his move, and go past all the other horses. If he can do that in this race, and he is fired up and runs anywhere near how he ran in the Traverse, this will be your Kentucky Derby winner. But we have one more horse to talk about, and that's the 18 Authentic, the other Bob Baffert trainee. And we haven't talked about a horse that wants to be on the lead, because that is the horse right here from the far outside. He's the third choice on the morning line. Authentic will be gunning for the lead from the far outside. The only worry is the other time he had the far outside post was that Santa Anita Derby, where he got upset by Honor AP, broke out to the outside, recovered, got to the lead, but it took too much energy and Honor AP was able to go by him in the stretch. I fear that something very similar will happen here. I already don't think he likes the distance. I don't think he wants to go 1.25 miles. So now that he's going to have to, from the far outside, he's going to have to lose ground, try to get to the lead. Meanwhile, other horses on the inside, like the 15 New York Traffic, the 10,000 Words, the 6 King Guillermo, will probably all have easier trips to get to the rail and get up and be the first horse turning as they head to the clubhouse turn on that first turn. It's going to be hard for Authentic. And then even if he does get the lead, he's going to have to hold off a late charge, as I think he'll be tiring out and the pace will be fast. Authentic is not for me at 8-1. So as we look at my pace projection for this race, I think it will be the 6 King Guillermo and the 18 Authentic that take the charge into that first turn. Sitting right behind them will be a couple of the favorites, Tiz the Law, New York Traffic not too far behind, as well as 1,000 Words, and the 2-year-old champion Storm the Court. Honor AP not too far behind them, and then we get to the late closers and the mid-pack runners respectively. As they turn for home, I expect Authentic to struggle with the distance, leaving King Guillermo, Tiz the Law, and New York Traffic as the top 3 heading into the final stretch. From there, it could be anybody's race, but I will list my top 4 choices as Tiz the Law as the favorite. He's the best horse and the horse to beat. King Guillermo is my second choice, coming off of a long layoff, but an impressive horse, has been working out well and has run great races off of layoffs before. Third, New York Traffic, a horse that looks like he wants the distance, has competed against the top horses in this division all year long, just has not been able to get over the hump. And in the 4th spot, I will use a late running closer, Major Fed, a horse that has struggled in a couple races, but is also really impressed coming from off the pace. Usually doesn't get up to win, but can get up to get a piece. At a nice price, I will definitely be using him as my 4th choice. Some other horses at a price I definitely want to use: the 3 Enforceable and the 13 Attachment Rate. And some horses that I think are just too good to ignore: the 10,000 Words and the 16 Honor AP. So there you have it. That is your Kentucky Derby preview video, the 2020 edition, the 146th Run for the Roses. I have Tiz the Law 1, King Guillermo 2, New York Traffic 3, Major Fed 4. Good luck to all players and enjoy the Run for the Roses.